Hello, my name is Neil Donald Walsh. What you're about to hear is a portion of a 6-year dialogue which makes up a trilogy I've called Conversations with God. This program contains material from the third volume of that trilogy and touches on subjects such as the fastest way to wisdom, the 5 natural emotions and how to use them as our friends, and the nature of psychic ability. Also in this volume is a discussion of the origin of the myth of Satan, and a wonderful clarification of the nature of time and how all things are happening at once. Now, if you're coming to the Conversations with God material for the first time, a brief explanation may be in order here. In 1992, I'd reached a low point in my life. Nothing was working. My relationships were falling apart. My career was coming to an end. Even my health was failing. In anguish and despair, I called out to God, begging for answers to the questions which plague all of us at moments like that. What does it take to make life work? And what have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? One night I awoke in a fit of anger and wrote all these questions out on a yellow legal pad. To my astonishment, even as I wrote them, I began to receive answers. I found my pen moving effortlessly across the page as I wrote out the thoughts being given to me by what I can only describe as a voiceless voice. I was receiving answers to my questions, and all I had to do was take dictation. This I did intermittently for 6 years, engaging in an ongoing dialogue covering an extraordinary range of topics. For once I started receiving answers, I did not stop asking questions. This program is an audio presentation of a portion of that material. Because I received this dictation from a voiceless voice, that is, a voice having neither male nor female characteristics, it was important to me that the words of God on the audio program be assigned to both a man and a woman, so that the voice would not be gender-specific. I want to thank Edward Asner and Ellen Burstyn for reading this material with me and making it come alive. As we open this portion of the dialogue, I'm keenly aware that I'm not worthy to represent myself as a man of God or a messenger of truth. I should be the last person to assume that role, or even to presume to. I do an injustice to the truth by presuming to speak it, when my whole life has been a testimony to my weaknesses. For these reasons, I asked God to relieve me of my duties as His scribe, and that she find someone else whose life renders them worthy of such an honor. Here was God's answer.
I should like to finish what we started here, though you are under no obligation to do so. You have no duties to me or to anyone else, though I see that your thought that you do has led you to much guilt.
Well, I've let some people down, including my own children.
Everything that has happened in your life has happened perfectly in order for you and all the souls involved with you to grow in exactly the way you've needed and wanted to grow.
That's a perfect out, constructed by everyone in the New Age who wishes to escape responsibility for their actions and avoid any unpleasant outcomes. I feel that I've been selfish, incredibly selfish, most of my life, doing what pleases me regardless of its impact on others.
There is nothing wrong in doing what pleases you.
But so many people have been hurt, let down.
There is only the question of what pleases you most. You seem to be saying that what now pleases you most are behaviors which do little or no damage to others.
That's putting it mildly.
On purpose. You must learn to be gentle with yourself and stop judging yourself.
Well, that's hard, particularly when others are so ready to judge. I feel I'm going to be an embarrassment to you, to the truth. But if I insist on completing and publishing this trilogy, I'll be such a poor ambassador for your message as to discredit it.
You cannot discredit truth. Truth is truth, and it can neither be proven nor disproven. It simply is. The wonder and the beauty of my message cannot and will not be affected by what people think of you. Indeed, you are one of the best ambassadors because you have lived your life in a way that you call less than perfect. People can relate to you, even as they judge you. And if they see that you are truly sincere, they can even forgive you your sordid past. Yet I tell you this, so long as you are still worried about what others think of you, you are owned by them. Only when you require no approval from outside yourself can you own yourself.
Well, my concern was more for the message than for me. I was concerned that the message would get besmirched.
If you are concerned about the message, then get the message out. Do not worry about besmirching it. The message will speak for itself. Remember what I have taught you. It is not nearly so important how well a message is received as how well it is sent. Remember this also. You teach what you have to learn. It is not necessary to have achieved perfection to speak of perfection. It is not necessary to have achieved mastery to speak of mastery. It is not necessary to have achieved the highest level of evolution to speak of the highest level of evolution. Seek only to be genuine. Strive to be sincere. If you wish to undo all the damage you imagine yourself to have done, demonstrate that in your actions. Do what you can do. Then let it rest.
That's easier said than done. Sometimes I feel so guilty.
Guilt and fear are the only enemies of man.
Yeah, but guilt is important. It tells us when we've done wrong.
There is no such thing as wrong. There's only that which does not serve you, does not speak the truth about who you are and who you choose to be. Guilt is the feeling that keeps you stuck in who you are not.
But guilt is the feeling that at least lets us notice we've gone astray.
Awareness is what you are talking about, not guilt. I tell you this, guilt is a blight upon the land, the poison that kills the plant. You will not grow through guilt, but only shrivel and die. Awareness is what you seek. But awareness is not guilt, and love is not fear. Fear and guilt, I say again, are your only enemies. Love and awareness are your true friends. Yet do not confuse the one with the other, for one will kill you, while the other gives you life.
Then I should not feel guilty about anything?
Never, ever. What good is there in that? It only allows you to not love yourself, and that kills any chance that you could love another.
And I should fear nothing?
Fear and caution are two different things. Be cautious, be conscious, but do not be fearful. For fear only paralyzes, while consciousness mobilizes. Be mobilized, not paralyzed.
I was always taught to fear God.
I know. And you have been paralyzed in your relationships with me ever since. It was only when you stopped fearing me that you could create any kind of meaningful relationship with me. If I could give you any gift, any special grace that would allow you to find me, it would be fearlessness. Blessed are the fearless, for they shall know God. That means you must be fearless enough to drop what you think you know about God. You must be fearless enough to step away from what others have told you about God. You must be so fearless that you can dare to enter into your own experience of God. And then you must not feel guilty about it. When your own experience is violating what you thought you knew, and what everyone else has told you about God, you must not feel guilty. Fear and guilt are the only enemies of man.
Yet there are those who say that to do as you suggest is trafficking with the devil, that only the devil would suggest such a thing.
There is no devil.
That's something else the devil would say.
The devil would say everything that God says. Is that it?
Only more cleverly.
The devil is more clever than God?
Well, let's say more cunning.
And so the devil connives by saying what God would say?
Well, with just a little twist, just enough to get one off the path to lead one astray.
I think we have to have a little talk about the devil.
Well, we talked a lot about this in Book 1.
Not enough, apparently. Besides, there may be those who haven't read Book 1, or Book 2 for that matter. So I think a good place for us to begin
would be to summarize some of the truths found in those books. That will set the stage for the larger universal truths in this third book. And we'll get to the devil again, too, early on. I want you to know how and why such an entity was invented.
Okay, all right, you win. I'm already into the dialogue, so apparently it's going to continue. But there's one thing people should know as I enter this third conversation. Half a year has passed since I wrote the first words presented here. It's now November 25th, 1994, the day after Thanksgiving. It's taken 25 weeks to get this far. 25 weeks since your last words to my words. A lot has happened in those 25 weeks, but one thing that's not happened is that this book has not moved 1 inch forward. Why is this taking so long?
Do you see how you can block yourself? Do you see how you can sabotage yourself? Do you see how you can stop yourself in your tracks just when you're onto something good? You've been doing this all your life.
Hey, wait a minute. I'm not the one who's been stalling on this project. I can't do anything. Can't write a single word unless I feel moved to, unless I feel, I hate to use the word, but I guess I have to, inspired to come to a yellow legal pad and continue. And inspiration is your department, not mine.
I see. So you think I've been stalling, not you?
Something like that, yes.
My wonderful friend. This is so much like you and other human beings. You sit on your hands for half a year doing nothing about your highest good, actually pushing it from you, then blame someone or something outside of yourself for not getting anywhere. Do you not see a pattern here?
Well,
I tell you this, there is never a time when I am not with you. Never a moment when I am not ready. Have I not told you this before?
well, yes, but
I am always with you, even unto the end of time. Yet I will not impose my will on you ever. I choose your highest good for you, but above that, I choose your will for you. And this is the surest measure of love. When I want for you what you want for you, then I truly love you. When I want for you what I want for you, then I am loving me through you. So too, by the same measure, can you determine whether others love you and whether you truly love others. For love chooses not for itself, but only seeks to make possible the choices of the beloved other.
Well, that seems to directly contradict what you put in Book 1 about love being not at all concerned with what the other is being, doing, and having, and only with what the self is being, doing, and having. It brings up other questions as well, like, what of the parent who shouts at the child, "Hey, get out of the street," or better yet, risks his own life to run out into swirling traffic and snatch the child up? What of that parent? Is she not loving her child? Yet she's imposed her own will. Remember, the child was in the street because it wanted to be. How do you explain these contradictions?
There is no contradiction, yet you cannot see the harmony, and you will not understand this divine doctrine about love until you understand that my highest choice for me is the same as your highest choice for you. And that is because you and I are one. You see, the divine doctrine is also a divine dichotomy. And that is because life itself is a dichotomy, an experience within which two apparently contradictory truths can exist in the same space at the same time. In this case, the apparently contradictory truths are that you and I are separate, and you and I are one. The same apparent contradiction appears in the relationship between you and everyone else. I stand by what I said in Book 1. The biggest mistake people make in human relationships is to be concerned for what the other is wanting, being, doing, or having. Be concerned only for the self. What is the self being, doing, or having? What is the self wanting, needing, choosing? What is the highest choice for the self? I also stand by another statement I made in that book. The highest choice for the self becomes the highest choice for another when the self realizes that there is no one else. The mistake, therefore, is not in choosing what is best for you, but rather in not knowing what is best. This stems from not knowing who you really are, much less who you are seeking to be.
I don't understand.
Well, let me give you an illustration. If you're seeking to win the Indianapolis 500, driving 150 miles per hour might be what is best for you. If you're seeking to get to the grocery store safely, it might not.
You're saying it's all contextual.
Yes, all of life is. What is best depends on who you are and who you seek to be. You cannot intelligently choose what is best for you until you intelligently decide who and what you are. Now, I, as God, know what I am seeking to be. I therefore know what is best for me.
And what is that? Tell me, what is best for God? This ought to be interesting.
What is best for me is giving you what you decide is best for you. Because what I am trying to be is myself expressed, and I am being this through you. Are you following this?
Yes. Believe it or not, I actually am.
Good. Now I will tell you something you may find difficult to believe. I'm always giving you what is best for you, though I admit that you may not always know it. This mystery clears up a bit now that you begin to understand what I am up to. I am God.
I am the goddess,
I am the supreme being,
the all of everything,
the beginning and the end.
the Alpha and Omega.
I am the sum and the substance, the question and the answer, the up and the down of it, the left and the right, the here and the now, the before and the after.
I am the light, and I am the darkness that creates the light and makes it possible. I am the goodness without end, and the badness which makes the goodness good. I am all of these things, the all of everything, and I cannot experience any part of myself without experiencing all of myself. And this is what you do not understand about me. You want to make me the one and not the other, the high and not the low, the good and not the bad. Yet in denying half of me, you deny half of yourself. And in so doing, you can never be who you really are. I am the magnificent everything, and what I am seeking is to know myself experientially. I am doing this through you and through everything else that exists. And I am experiencing myself as magnificent through the choices I make. For each choice is self-creative. Each choice is definitive. Each choice represents me. That is, represents me as who I choose to be right now. Yet I cannot choose to be magnificent unless there is something to choose from. Some part of me must be less than magnificent for me to choose the part of me which is magnificent. So too is it with you. I am God in the act of creating myself, and so too are you. This is what your soul longs to do. This is that for which your spirit hungers. Were I to stop you from having what you choose, I would stop myself from having what I choose. For my greatest desire is to experience myself as what I am. And as I carefully and painstakingly explained in Book 1, I can only do that in the space of what I am not. And so, I have carefully created what I am not, in order that I might experience what I am. Yet I am everything I create. Therefore, I am, in a sense, what I am not.
Whoa, how can someone be what they are not?
Easy, you do it all the time. Just watch your behaviors. Seek to understand this. There is nothing that I am not. Therefore, I am what I am, and I am what I am not. This is the divine dichotomy. This is the divine mystery which, until now, only the most sublime minds could understand. I have revealed it for you here in a way that more can understand. This was the message of Book 1, and this basic truth you must understand. You must deeply know if you are to understand and know the even more sublime truths to come here in Book 3. Yet let me now get to one of those more sublime truths, for it is contained in the answer to the second part of your question.
I was hoping we were going to get back to that part of my question. How is the parent loving the child if he says or does what is best for the child, even if he has to thwart the child's own will to do it? Or does the parent demonstrate the truest love by letting the child play in traffic?
Oh, this is a wonderful question, and it's the question asked by every parent in some form or another since parenting began.
The answer is the same for you as a parent as it is for me as God.
So what is the answer?
Patience, my son. Patience. All good things come to those who wait. Have you never heard of that?
Yeah, my father used to say it, and I hated it.
I can understand that. But do have patience with yourself, especially if your choices are not bringing you what you think you want. The answer to the second part of your question, for example. You say that you want the answer, but you are not choosing it. You know you are not choosing it because you do not experience having it. In truth, you have the answer and have had it all along. You simply are not choosing it. You are choosing to believe you do not know the answer, and so you do not.
Yes, we went all over this, too, in Book 1. I have everything I choose to have right now, including a complete understanding of God, yet I will not experience that I have it until I know that I do.
Precisely. You put it perfectly.
But how can I know that I do until I experience that I do? How can I know something I haven't experienced? Wasn't there a great mind who said, all knowing is experience?
He was wrong. Knowing does not follow experience. It precedes it. In this, half the world has it backwards.
So you mean that I have the answer to the second part of my question, and I just don't know that I do?
Exactly.
Yet if I don't know that I do, then I don't.
That's the paradox, yes.
I don't get it. Except that I do.
Indeed.
So how can I get to this place of knowing that I know something if I don't know that I know?
To know that you know, act as if you do.
You mentioned something about that in Book 1 also.
Yes. A good place to start here would be to recap what's gone before in the previous teaching. And you just happen to be asking the right questions, allowing me to summarize in short form at the beginning of this book the information we discussed in prior material in some detail. Now, in Book 1, we talked about the be, do, have paradigm and how most people have it reversed. Most people believe if they have a thing, more time, money, love, whatever, then they can finally do a thing, write a book, take up a hobby, go on vacation, buy a home, undertake a relationship, which will allow them to be a thing, happy, peaceful, content, or in love. In actuality, they are reversing the be, do, have paradigm. In the universe as it really is, as opposed to how you think it is. Havingness does not produce beingness, but the other way around. First you be the thing called happy, or knowing, or wise, or compassionate, or whatever. Then you start doing things from this place of beingness. And soon you discover that what you are doing winds up bringing you the things you've always wanted to have. The way to set this creative process, and that's what this is, the process of creation, into motion, is to look at what it is you want to have. Ask yourself what you think you would be if you had that. Then go right straight to being. In this way, you reverse the way you've been using the be, do, have paradigm. In actuality, set it right and work with, rather than against, the creative power of the universe. Here's a short way of stating this principle. In life, you do not have to do anything. It is all a question of what you are being. This is one of the 3 messages I will touch on again at the end of our dialogue. I will close the book with it. For now, and to illustrate this, think of a person who just knows that if he could only have a little more time, a little more money, or a little more love, he'd be truly happy.
He doesn't get the connection between his not being very happy right now and not having the time, money, or love he wants.
That's right. On the other hand, the person who is being happy seems to have time to do everything that's really important. All the money that's needed, and enough love to last a lifetime.
He finds he has everything he needs to be happy by being happy to begin with.
Exactly. Deciding ahead of time what you choose to be produces that in your experience.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
Precisely. Happiness is a state of mind, and like all states of mind, it reproduces itself in physical form. A statement for a refrigerator magnet. All states of mind reproduce themselves.
But how can you be happy to begin with? Or be anything you're seeking to be, more prosperous, for instance, or more loved, if you're not having what you think you need in order to be that?
Act as if you are, and you will draw it to you. What you act as if you are, you become.
In other words, fake it until you make it.
Something like that, yes. Only you can't really be faking. Your actions have to be sincere. Everything you do out of sincerity, or the benefit of the action is lost. This is not because I won't reward you. God does not reward and punish, as you know. But natural law requires the body, mind, and spirit to be united in thought, word, and action for the process of creation to work. You cannot fool your mind. If you are insincere, your mind knows it. And that's that. You've just ended any chance that your mind can help you in the creative process. You can, of course, create without your mind. It's just a great deal more difficult. You can ask your body to do something your mind doesn't believe, and if your body does it long enough, your mind will begin to let go of its former thought about that and create a new thought. Once you have a new thought about a thing, you're well on your way to creating it as a permanent aspect of your being, rather than something you're just acting out. This is doing things the hard way, and even in such instances, the action must be sincere. Unlike what you can do with people, you cannot manipulate the universe. So here we have a very delicate balance. The body does something in which the mind does not believe, yet the mind must add the ingredient of sincerity to the body's action for it to work.
How can the mind add sincerity when it does not believe in what the body is doing?
By taking out the selfish element of personal gain.
How?
The mind may not be able to sincerely agree that the actions of the body can bring you that which you choose. But the mind seems very clear that God will bring good things through you to another. Therefore, whatever you choose for yourself, give to another.
Would you say that again, please?
Of course. Whatever you choose for yourself, give to another. If you choose to be happy, cause another to be happy. If you choose to be prosperous, cause another to prosper. If you choose more love in your life, cause another to have more love in theirs. Do this sincerely, not because you seek personal gain, but because you really want the other person to have that. And all the things you give away will come to you.
But why is that so? How does that work?
The very act of your giving something away causes you to experience that you have it to give away. Since you cannot give to another something you do not now have, your mind comes to a new conclusion, a new thought about you. Namely, that you must have this, or you could not be giving it away. This new thought then becomes your experience. You start being that. And once you start being a thing, you've engaged the gears of the most powerful creation machine in this universe, your divine self. Whatever you are being, you are creating. The circle is complete, and you will create more and more of that in your life. It will be made manifest in your physical experience. This is the greatest secret of life. It is what Book 1 and Book 2 were written to tell you. It was all there in far greater detail.
Explain to me now, please, why sincerity is so important in giving to another what you choose for yourself.
If you give to another as a contrivance, a manipulation meant to get something to come to you, your mind knows this. You've just given it a signal that you do not now have this. And since the universe is nothing but a big copying machine, reproducing your thoughts in physical form, that will be your experience. That is, you will continue to experience not having it, no matter what you do. Furthermore, that will be the experience of the person to whom you're trying to give it. They will see that you are merely seeking to get something, that you have nothing really to offer. And your giving will be an empty gesture, seen for all the self-serving shallowness from which it springs. The very thing you sought to attract, you will thus push away. Yet when you give something to another with purity of heart, because you see that they want it, need it, and should have it, then you will discover that you have it to give. That is a grand discovery.
This is true. It really works this way. I can remember once when things were not going so well in my life, holding my head and thinking that I had no more money and very little food and that I didn't even know where I was going to eat my next square meal or how I was going to pay my rent. That very evening, I met a young couple at a bus station. I'd gone down there to pick up a package or something, and there were these kids there, huddled on a bench, using their coats as a blanket. I saw them, and my heart went out to them, of course. I could remember when I was young and how it was when we were kids, just skimming by and on the move like that. Well, I walked over to them and asked them if they'd like to come over to my place and sit by a hot fire, have a little hot chocolate, maybe open up the daybed and get a good night's rest. They looked up at me with eyes wide, like children on Christmas morning. Well, we got to the house, and I made him a meal. You know, we all ate better that night than any of us had for quite a while. The food had always been there. The refrigerator was loaded. I just had to reach back and grab all the stuff I'd shoved back there. I made an everything in the fridge stir-fry, and it was terrific. I remember thinking, where did all this food come from? The next morning, I even gave the kids breakfast. Then I sent them on their way, reached into my pocket as I dropped them off at the bus station, gave them a $20 bill. Maybe this will help, I said. Gave them a hug, sent them on their way. I felt better about my own situation all day. Heck, all week. And that experience, which I've never forgotten, produced a profound change in my outlook and my understandings about life. Things got better from there, and as I looked at myself in the mirror this morning, I noticed something very important. I'm still here.
That's a beautiful story. And you're right. That's exactly how it works. So when you want something, give it away. You will then no longer be wanting it. You will immediately experience having it. From there on, it is only a question of degree. Psychologically, you will find it much easier to add on to than to create out of thin air.
I feel I've just heard something very profound here. Can you relate this now to the second part of my question? Is there a connection?
What I'm proposing, you see, is that you already have the answer to that question. Right now, you are living the thought that you do not have the answer, that if you had the answer, you would have wisdom. So you come to me for wisdom. Yet I say to you, be wisdom, and you will have it.
And what is the fastest way to be wisdom? Cause another to be wise. Do you choose to have the answer to this question? Give the answer to another. So now, I'll ask you the question. I'll pretend that I don't know, and you give me the answer. How can the parent who pulls the child out of traffic be truly loving the child if love means that you want for the other what they want for themselves?
I don't know.
I know you don't, but if you thought you did, what would your answer be?
Well, I'd say that the parent did want for the child what the child wanted, which was to stay alive. I'd say that the child did not want to die, but simply did not know that wandering around in traffic would cause that. So that in running out there to get the child, the parent wasn't depriving the child of the opportunity to exercise its will at all, but simply getting in touch with the child's true choice, its deepest desire.
That would be a very good answer.
If that's true, then you, as God, should be doing nothing but stopping us from hurting ourselves. It can't be our deepest desire to do damage to ourselves. Yet we do damage to ourselves all the time, and you just sit around and watch us.
I am always in touch with your deepest desire, and always I give you that. Even when you do something that would cause you to die, if that is your deepest desire, that is what you get, the experience of dying. I never, ever interfere with your deepest desire.
Do you mean that when we do damage to ourselves, that's what we wanted to do? That's our deepest desire?
You cannot do damage to yourself. You are incapable of being damaged. Damage is a subjective reaction, not an objective phenomenon. You can choose to experience damage to yourself out of any encounter or phenomenon, but that is entirely your decision. Given that truth, the answer to your question is yes. When you have damaged yourself, it is because you wanted to. But I'm speaking on a very high esoteric level, and that is not really where your question is coming from. In the sense that you mean it, as a matter of conscious choice, I would say that no, every time you do something that damages yourself, it is not because you wanted to. The child who gets hit by a car because he wandered into the street did not want, desire, seek, consciously choose to get hit by a car. The man who keeps marrying the same kind of woman, one who is all wrong for him, packaged in different forms, does not want, desire, seek, consciously choose to keep creating bad marriages. The person who hits a thumb with a hammer could not be said to have wanted the experience. It was not desired, sought, consciously chosen. Yet all objective phenomena are drawn to you subconsciously. All events are created by you unconsciously. Every person, place, or thing in your life was drawn to you by you, was self-created, if you will, to provide you with the exact and perfect conditions, the perfect opportunity to experience what you next wish to experience as you go about the business of evolving. Nothing can happen in your life, I say to you, nothing can occur which is not a precisely perfect opportunity for you to heal something, create something, or experience something that you wish to heal, create, or experience in order to be who you really are.
And who really am I?
Whomever you choose to be. Whatever aspect of divinity you wish to be, that's who you are. That can change at any given moment. Indeed, it often does from moment to moment. Yet, if you want your life to settle down, to stop bringing you such a wide variety of experiences, there's a way to do that. Simply stop changing your mind so often about who you are and who you choose to be.
Well, that may be easier said than done.
What I see is that you are making these decisions at many different levels. The child who decides to go out into the street to play in traffic is not making a choice to die. She may be making a number of other choices, but dying is not one of them. The mother knows that. The problem here is not that the child has chosen to die, but that the child has made choices that could lead to more than one outcome, including her dying. That fact is not clear to her. It is unknown to her. It is the missing data which stops the child from making a clear choice, a better choice. So you see, you have analyzed it perfectly. Now I, as God, will never interfere with your choices, but I will always know what they are. Therefore, you may assume that if a thing happens to you, it is perfect that it did so, for nothing escapes perfection in God's world. The design of your life, the people, places, and events in it, all have been perfectly created by the perfect creator of perfection itself, you, and me, in, as, and through you. Now, we can work together in this co-creative process consciously or unconsciously. You can move through life aware or unaware. You can walk your path asleep or awake. You choose.
Wait, go back to that comment about making decisions at many different levels. You said that if I wanted life to settle down, I should stop changing my mind about who I am and who I wish to be. When I said that that may not be easy, you made the observation that all of us are making our choices at many different levels. Can you elaborate on that? What does that mean? What are the implications?
If all you desired is what your soul desired, everything would be very simple. If you listen to the part of you which is pure spirit, all of your decisions would be easy and all the outcomes joyous. That is because the choices of spirit are always the highest choices. They don't need to be second-guessed. They don't need to be analyzed or evaluated. They simply need to be followed, acted on. Yet you are not only a spirit. You are a triune being made up of body, mind, and spirit. That is both the glory and the wonder of you. For you often make decisions and choices at all three levels simultaneously, and they by no means always coincide. It is not uncommon for your body to want one thing, while your mind seeks another, and your spirit desires yet a third. This can be especially true of children, who are often not yet mature enough to make distinctions between what sounds like fun to the body and what makes sense to the mind, much less what resonates with the soul. So the child waddles into the street. Now, as God, I am aware of all your choices, even those you make subconsciously. I will never interfere with them, but rather just the opposite. It is my job to ensure that your choices are granted. In truth, you grant them to yourself. What I have done is put a system into place that allows you to do that. This system is called the process of creation and is explained in detail in Book 1. When your choices conflict, when body, mind, and spirit are not acting as one, the process of creation works at all levels, producing mixed results. If, on the other hand, your being is in harmony and your choices are unified, astonishing things can occur. Your young people have a phrase, having it all together, which could be used to describe this unified state of being. There are also levels within levels in your decision-making. This is particularly true at the level of the mind. Your mind can and does make decisions and choices from one of at least 3 interior levels: logic, intuition, emotion, and sometimes from all 3, producing the potential for even more inner conflict. And within one of those levels, emotion, there are 5 more levels. These are the 5 natural emotions: grief, anger, envy, fear, and love. And within these also, there are 2 final levels: love and fear. The 5 natural emotions include love and fear, yet love and fear are the basis of all emotions. The other 3 of the 5 natural emotions are outgrowths of these 2. Ultimately, all thoughts are sponsored by love or fear. This is the great polarity. This is the primal duality. Everything ultimately breaks down to one of these. All thoughts, ideas, concepts, understandings, decisions, choices, and actions are based in one of these. And in the end, there is really only one: love. In truth, love is all there is. Even fear is an outgrowth of love, and when used effectively, expresses love.
Fear expresses love?
In its highest form, yes. Everything expresses love. When the expression is in its highest form. Does the parent who saves the child from being killed in traffic express fear or love?
Well, both, I suppose. Fear for the child's life and love, enough to risk one's own life to save the child.
Precisely. And so here we see that fear in its highest form becomes love, is love, expressed as fear. Similarly, moving up the scale of natural emotions, grief, anger, and envy are all some form of fear, which in turn is some form of love. One thing leads to another. Do you see? The problem comes in
when any of the 5 natural emotions become distorted. Then they become grotesque and not recognizable at all as outgrowths of love, much less as God, which is what absolute love is.
I've heard of the 5 natural emotions before, from my wonderful association with Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She taught me about them.
Indeed, it was I who inspired her to teach about this.
So I see that when I make choices, much depends on where I'm coming from. That where I'm coming from could be several layers deep.
Yes, that is what is so.
Please tell me. I'd like to hear about it again because I've forgotten so much of what Elizabeth taught me. Tell me all about the 5 natural emotions.
Grief is a natural emotion. It's that part of you which allows you to say goodbye when you don't want to say goodbye. To express, push out, propel the sadness within you at the experience of any kind of loss. It could be the loss of a loved one and the loss of a contact lens. When you are allowed to express your grief, you get rid of it. Children who are allowed to be sad when they are sad feel very healthy about sadness when they are adults, and therefore usually move through their sadness very quickly. Children who are told, there, don't cry, have a hard time crying as adults. After all, they've been told all their life not to do that, so they repress their grief. Grief that is continually repressed becomes chronic depression, a very unnatural emotion. People have killed because of chronic depression. Wars have started. Nations have fallen. Anger is a natural emotion. It is the tool you have which allows you to say, no, thank you. It does not have to be abusive, and it never has to be damaging to another. When children are allowed to express their anger, they bring a very healthy attitude about it to their adult years, and therefore usually move through their anger very quickly. Children who are made to feel that their anger is not okay, that it is wrong to express it, and in fact that they shouldn't even experience it, will have a difficult time appropriately dealing with their anger as adults. Anger that is continually repressed becomes rage, a very unnatural emotion. People have killed because of rage. Wars have started. Nations have fallen. Envy is a natural emotion. It is the emotion that makes a 5-year-old wish he could reach the doorknob the way his sister can. Or ride that bike.
Yeah.
Envy is the natural emotion that makes you want to do it again. Try harder. To continue striving until you succeed. It is very healthy to be envious, very natural. When children are allowed to express their envy, they bring a very healthy attitude about it to their adult years, and therefore usually move through their envy very quickly. children who are made to feel that envy is not okay, that it is wrong to express it, and in fact, that they shouldn't even experience it, will have a difficult time appropriately dealing with their envy as adults. Envy that is continually repressed becomes jealousy, a very unnatural emotion. People have killed because of jealousy. Wars have started. Nations have fallen. Fear is a natural emotion. All babies are born with only two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. All other fears are learned responses, brought to the child by its environment, taught to the child by its parents. The purpose of natural fear is to build in a bit of caution. Caution is a tool that helps keep the body alive. It is an outgrowth of love of self. Children who are made to feel that fear is not okay, that it is wrong to express it, and in fact that they shouldn't even experience it, will have a difficult time appropriately dealing with their fear as adults. Fear that is continually repressed becomes panic, a very unnatural emotion. People have killed because of panic. Wars have started. Nations have fallen. Love is a natural emotion. When it is allowed to be expressed and received by a child normally and naturally, without limitation or condition, inhibition, or embarrassment, it does not require anything more. For the joy of love expressed and received in this way is sufficient unto itself. Yet love which has been conditioned, limited, warped by rules and regulations, rituals and restrictions, controlled, manipulated, and withheld, becomes unnatural. Children who are made to feel that their natural love is not okay, that it is wrong to express it, and in fact, that they shouldn't even experience it, will have a difficult time appropriately dealing with love as adults. Love that is continually repressed becomes possessiveness, a very unnatural emotion. People have killed because of possessiveness. Wars have started. Nations have fallen. And so it is that the natural emotions, when repressed, produce unnatural reactions and responses. And most natural emotions are repressed in most people. Yet these are your friends. These are your gifts. These are your divine tools with which to craft your experience. You were given these tools at birth. They are to help you negotiate life.
Why are these emotions repressed in most people?
They've been taught to repress them. They've been told to.
By whom?
Their parents, those who have raised them.
Why? Why would they do that?
Because they were taught by their parents, and their parents were told by theirs.
Yes, but why? What is going on?
What is going on is that you have the wrong people doing the parenting.
What do you mean? Who are the wrong people?
The mother and the father.
The mother and the father are the wrong people to raise the children?
When the parents are young, yes. In most cases, yes. In fact, it's a miracle that so many of them do as good a job as they do. No one is more ill-equipped to raise children than young parents. And no one knows this, by the way, better than young parents. Most parents come to the job of parenting with very little life experience. They're hardly finished being parented themselves. They're still looking for answers, still searching for clues. They haven't even discovered themselves yet, and they're trying to guide and nurture discovery in others even more vulnerable than they. They haven't even defined themselves, and they're thrust into the act of defining others. They are still trying to get over how badly they have been misdefined by their parents. They haven't even discovered yet who they are, and they're trying to tell you who you are. And the pressure is so great for them to get it right, yet they can't even get their own lives right. So they get the whole thing wrong, their lives and the lives of their children. If they're lucky, the damage to their children won't be too great. The offspring will overcome it, but not, probably, before passing some on to their offspring. Most of you gain the wisdom, the patience, the understanding, and the love to be wonderful parents after your parenting years are over.
Why? Why is this? I don't understand this. I see that your observation is in many cases correct, but why is this?
Because young child makers were never intended to be child raisers. Your child-raising years should really begin when they are now over.
Well, I'm still a little lost here.
Human beings are biologically capable of creating children while they are children themselves, which, it may surprise most of you to know, they are for 40 or 50 years.
Wait a minute, human beings are children themselves for 40 or 50 years?
From a certain perspective, yes. I know this is difficult to hold as your truth, but look around you. Perhaps the behaviors of your race might help prove my point. The difficulty is that in your society you are said to be all grown up and ready for the world at 21. Add to this the fact that many of you were raised by mothers and fathers who were not much older than 21 themselves when they began raising you. And you can begin to see the problem.
If child bearers were meant to be child raisers, childbearing would not have been made possible until you were 50. Childbearing was meant to be an activity of the young, whose bodies are well developed and strong. Child raising was meant to be an activity of the elders, whose minds are well developed and strong. In your society, you have insisted on making child bearers responsible for child raising, with the result that you've made not only the process of parenting very difficult, but distorted many of the energies surrounding the sexual act as well.
Could you explain?
Yes. Many humans have observed what I've observed here, namely that a good many humans, perhaps most, are not truly capable of raising children when they are capable of having them. However, having discovered this, humans have put in place exactly the wrong solution. Rather than allow younger humans to enjoy sex and, if it produces children, have the elders raise them, you tell young humans not to engage in sex until they are ready to take on the responsibility of raising children. You have made it wrong for them to have sexual experiences before that time, and thus have created a taboo around what was intended to be one of life's most joyful celebrations. Of course, this is a taboo to which offspring will pay little attention, and for good reason. It is entirely unnatural to obey it. Human beings desire to couple and copulate as soon as they feel the inner signal which says they are ready. This is human nature. Yet their thought about their own nature will have more to do with what you as parents have told them than about what they are feeling inside. Your children look to you to tell them what life is all about. So when they have their first urges to peek at each other, to play innocently with each other, to explore each other's differences, they will look to you for signals about this. Is this part of their human nature good? Is it bad? Is it approved of? Is it to be stifled, held back, discouraged? It is observed that what many parents have told their offspring about this part of their human nature has had its origin in all manner of things. What they were told, what their religion says, what their society thinks, everything except the natural order of things. In the natural order of your species, sexuality is budding at anywhere from age 9 to age 14. From age 15 onward, it is very much present and expressing in most human beings. Thus begins a race against time, with children stampeding toward the fullest release of their own joyful sexual energy, and parents stampeding to stop them. Parents have needed all the assistance and all the alliances they could find in this struggle, since, as has been noted, they are asking their offspring to not do something that is every bit a part of their nature. So adults have invented all manner of familial, cultural, religious, social, and economic pressures, restrictions, and limitations to justify their unnatural demands of their offspring. Children have thus grown to accept that their own sexuality is unnatural. How can anything that is natural be so shamed, so always stopped, so controlled, held at bay, restrained, bridled, and denied?
Well, I think you're exaggerating a bit here. Don't you think you're exaggerating?
Really? What do you think is the impact on a 4 or 5-year-old child when parents won't even use the correct name for certain of their body parts? What are you telling the child about your level of comfort with that and what you think theirs should be? Yes, indeed.
Well, we just don't use those words, as my grandma used to say. It's just that wee and your bottom sounds better.
Only because you have so much negative baggage attached to the actual names of these body parts that you can barely use the words in ordinary conversation. At the youngest ages, of course, children don't know why parents feel this way, but merely are left with the impression, the often indelible impression, that certain body parts are not okay, and that anything having to do with them is embarrassing, if not wrong. As children grow older and move into their teens, they may come to realize that this is not true, but then they are told in very clear terms about the connection between pregnancy and sexuality, and about how they will have to raise the children they create. And so they now have another reason for feeling that sexual expression is wrong, and the circle is complete. What this has caused in your society is confusion, and not a little havoc, which is always the result of fooling around with nature. You have created sexual embarrassment, repression, and shame, which has led to sexual inhibition, dysfunction, and violence. You will, as a society, always be inhibited about that over which you are embarrassed, always be dysfunctional with behaviors which have been repressed, and always act out violently in protest of being made to feel shame about that over which you know in your heart you should never have felt shame at all.
Ah, then Freud was onto something when he said that a huge amount of the anger in the human species might be sexually related. Deep-seated rage over having to repress basic and natural physical instincts, interests, and urges.
More than one of your psychiatrists has ventured as much. The human being is angry because it knows it should feel no shame over something that feels so good, and yet it does feel shame and guilt. First, the human becomes angry with the self for feeling so good about something which is supposed to be so obviously bad. Then, when they finally realize they've been duped, that sexuality is supposed to be a wonderful, honorable, glorious part of the human experience, they become angry with others. Parents for repressing them, religion for shaming them, members of the opposite sex for daring them, the whole society for controlling them. Finally, they become angry with themselves for allowing all of this to inhibit them. Much of this repressed anger has been channeled into the construction of distorted and misguided moral values in the society in which you now live, a society which glorifies and honors with monuments, statues, and commemorative stamps, films, pictures, and TV programs some of the world's ugliest acts of violence, but hides, or worse yet, cheapens some of the world's most beautiful acts of love. And all of this has emerged from a single thought, that those who bear children bear also the sole responsibility for raising them.
But if the people who have children aren't responsible for raising them, who is?
The whole community, with special emphasis on the elders.
The elders?
In most advanced races and societies, elders raise the offspring, nurture the offspring, train the offspring, and pass on to the offspring the wisdom, teachings, and traditions of their kind. Later, when we talk about some of these advanced civilizations, I'll touch on this again. In any society where producing offspring at a young age is not considered wrong because the tribal elders raised them, and there is therefore no sense of overwhelming responsibility and burden, sexual repression is unheard of, and so is rape, deviance, and social sexual dysfunction.
Are there such societies on our planet?
Yes, although they've been disappearing. You've sought to eradicate them, assimilate them, because you have thought them to be barbarian. In what you have called your non-barbarian societies, children, and wives and husbands for that matter, are thought of as property, as personal possessions, and child bearers must therefore become child raisers because they must take care of what they own. A root thought at the bottom of many of your society's problems is this idea that spouses and children are personal possessions, that they are yours. We'll examine this whole subject of ownership later when we explore and discuss life among highly evolved beings. But for now, just think about this for a minute. Is anyone really emotionally ready to raise children at the time they're physically ready to have them? The truth is,
Most humans are not equipped to raise children, even in their 30s and 40s, and shouldn't be expected to be. They really haven't lived enough as adults to pass deep wisdom to their children.
I've heard that before. Mark Twain had a take on this. He was said to have commented, "When I was 19, my father knew nothing, but when I was 35, I was amazed at how much the old man had learned."
He captured it perfectly.
Yeah.
Your younger years were never meant to be for truth teaching, but for truth gathering. How can you teach children a truth you haven't yet gathered? You can't, of course. So you'll wind up telling them the only truth you know, the truth of others. Your fathers, your mothers, your cultures, your religions. Anything, everything but your own truth. You are still searching for that. And you will be searching and experimenting and finding and failing and forming and reforming your truth, your idea about yourself, until you are half a century on this planet or near to it. Then you may begin at last to settle down and settle in with your truth. And probably the biggest truth on which you'll agree is that there is no constant truth at all. The truth, like life itself, is a changing thing, a growing thing, an evolving thing, and that just when you think that process of evolution has stopped, it has not, but only really just begun.
Yes. I've already come to that. I'm just past 50, and I've arrived at that.
Good. You're now a wiser man, an elder. Now you should raise children. Or better yet, 10 years from now. It is the elders who should raise the offspring, and who were intended to. It is the elders who know of truth and life, of what is important and what is not, of what is really meant by such terms as integrity, honesty, loyalty, friendship, and love.
I see the point you've been making here. It's difficult to accept, but many of us have barely moved from child to student when we have children of our own and feel we have to start teaching them. So we figure, well, I'll teach them what my parents taught me.
Thus, the sins of the father are visited upon the son, even unto the 7th generation.
How can we change that? How can we end the cycle?
Place the raising of children in the hands of your respected old ones. Parents see the children whenever they wish, live with them if they choose, but are not solely responsible for their care and upbringing. The physical, social, and spiritual needs of the children are met by the entire community, with education and values offered by the elders. Later in our dialogue, when we talk about those other cultures in the universe, we'll look at some new models for living, but these models won't work the way you've currently structured your life.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's not just parenting you're doing with an ineffective model, but your whole way of living.
Again, what do you mean?
You've moved away from each other. You've torn apart your families, disassembled your smaller communities in favor of huge cities. In these big cities, there are more people, but fewer tribes, groups, or clans whose members see their responsibility as including responsibility for the whole. So in effect, you have no elders. None at arm's reach in any event. Worse than moving away from your elders, you've pushed them aside, marginalized them, taken their power away, and even resented them. Yes, some members of your society are even resenting the seniors among you, claiming that they're somehow leeching on the system, demanding benefits that the young have to pay for with ever-increasing proportions of their income.
It's true. I know it's true. Some sociologists are now predicting a generation war, with older people being blamed for requiring more and more while contributing less and less. And there are so many more older citizens now, what with the baby boomers moving into their senior years and people living longer in general.
Yet if your elders aren't contributing, it's because you have not allowed them to contribute. You've required them to retire from their jobs just when they could really do the company some good, and to retire from most active, meaningful participation in life, just when their participation could bring some sense to the proceedings. Not just in parenting, but in politics, economics, and even in religion, where elders at least had a toehold. You've become a youth-worshipping, elder-dismissing society. Yours has also become a singular society rather than a plural one. That is, a society made up of individuals rather than groups. As you have both individualized and youthened your society, you have lost much of its richness and resource. Now you are without both, with too many of you living in emotional and psychological poverty and depletion.
I'm going to ask you again. Is there any way we can end this cycle?
First, recognize and acknowledge that it's real. So many of you are living in denial. So many of you are pretending that what's so is simply not so. You are lying to yourselves, and you do not want to hear the truth, much less tell it. This too we'll talk about again later when we take that look at the civilizations of highly evolved beings, because this denial, this failure to observe, and acknowledge what's so is not an insignificant thing. And if you truly want to change things, I hope you will just allow yourself to hear me. The time has come for truth-telling, plain and simple. Are you ready?
I am. That's why I came to you. That's how this whole conversation began.
Truth is often uncomfortable. It is only comforting to those who do not wish to ignore it. Then truth becomes not only comforting, but inspiring.
For me, this whole three-part dialogue has been inspiring. Please, go on.
There's some good reason to be upbeat, to feel optimistic. I observe that things have begun to change. There's more emphasis among your species on creating community and building extended families than ever in recent years. And more you are honoring your elders, producing meaning and value in and from their lives. This is a big step in a wonderfully useful direction. So things are turning around. Your culture seems to have taken that step. Now it's onward from there. You cannot make these changes in one day. You cannot, for instance, change your whole way of parenting, which is how this current train of thought began, in one fell swoop. Yet you can change your future step by step. Hearing these words is one of those steps. This dialogue will circle back over many important points before we are finished. That repetition will not be by accident. It is for emphasis. Now, you asked for ideas for the construction of your tomorrows. Let us begin by looking at your yesterdays.
What does the past have to do with the future?
When you know about the past, you can better know about all your possible futures. You have come to me asking how to make your life work better. It will be useful for you to know how you got to where you are today. I would speak to you of power and of strength, and the difference between the two. And I would chat with you about the Satan figure you have invented, how and why you invented him, and how you decided that your God was a he and not a she. I would speak to you of who I really am, rather than who you have said I am in your mythologies. I would describe to you my beingness in such a way that you will gladly replace the mythology with the cosmology, the true cosmology of the universe, in its relationship to me. I would have you know about life, how it works, and why it works the way it works. When you know those things, then you can decide what you wish to discard of that which your race has created. For this third portion of our conversation, this third book, is about building a newer world, creating a new reality. You have been living too long, my children, in a prison of your own devise. It is time to set yourself free. You have imprisoned your 5 natural emotions, repressing them and turning them into very unnatural emotions, which have brought unhappiness, death, and destruction to your world. The model of behavior for centuries on this planet has been, do not indulge your emotions. If you're feeling grief, get over it. If you're feeling angry, stuff it. If you're feeling envious, be ashamed of it. If you're feeling fear, rise above it. If you're feeling love, control it, limit it, wait with it, run from it. Do whatever you have to do to stop from expressing it full out, right here, right now. It is time to set yourself free. In truth, you have imprisoned your holy self, and it is time to set yourself free.
Boy, I'm starting to get excited here. How do we start? Where do we begin?
In our brief study of how it all got to be this way, let us go back to the time when your society reorganized itself. That is when men became the dominant species and then decided it was inappropriate to display emotions, or in some cases, to even have them.
What do you mean when society reorganized itself? What are we talking about here?
In an earlier part of your history, you lived on this planet in a matriarchal society. Then there was a shift, and the patriarchy emerged. When you made that shift, you moved away from expressing your emotions. You labeled it weak to do so. It was during this period that males also invented the devil and the masculine god.
Males invented the devil?
Yes. Satan was essentially a male invention. Ultimately, all of society went along with it, but the turning away from emotions and the invention of an evil one was all part of a male rebellion against the matriarchy, a period during which women ruled over everything from their emotions. They held all governmental posts, all religious positions of power, all places of influence in commerce, science, academia, healing.
Well, what power did men have?
None. Men had to justify their existence, for they had very little importance beyond their ability to fertilize female eggs and move heavy objects. They were very much like worker ants and bees. They did the heavy physical labor and made sure that children were produced and protected. It took men hundreds of years to find and to create a larger place for themselves in the fabric of their society. Centuries passed before males were even allowed to participate in their clan's affairs, to have a voice or a vote in community decisions. They weren't considered by women to be intelligent enough to understand such matters.
Boy, it's difficult to imagine that any society would actually prohibit one whole class of people from even voting, based simply on gender.
I like your sense of humor about this, I really do. Shall we go on?
Please.
Centuries more passed before they could think of actually holding the positions of leadership for which they finally had the chance to vote. Other posts of influence and power within their culture were similarly denied them.
When males finally obtained positions of authority within society, when they at last rose above their former place as baby makers and virtual physical slaves, it's to their credit that they did not ever turn the tables on women, but have always accorded females the respect, power, and influence that all humans deserve regardless of gender.
There's that humor again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I have the wrong planet?
Let's get back to our narrative. But before we go on about the invention of the devil, let us talk a bit about power. Because this, of course, is what the invention of Satan was all about.
You're going to make the point now that men have all the power in today's society, right? Well, let me just jump ahead of you and tell you why I think this happened. You said that in the matriarchal period, men were very much like worker bees serving the queen bee. You said they did the difficult physical work and made sure that children were produced and protected. And I felt like saying, so what's changed? What do they do now? That's what they do. And I'll bet that many men would probably say that not a great deal has changed, except that men have extracted a price for maintaining their thankless role. They do have more power.
Actually, most of the power.
Okay, most of the power. But the irony I see here is that both genders think that they're handling the thankless tasks while the other is having all the fun. Men resent women who are attempting to take back some of their power because men say they'll be damned if they'll do all that they have to do for the culture and not at least have the power it takes to do it. And women resent men keeping all the power, saying they'll be damned if they'll continue doing for the culture what they do and still remain powerless.
You've analyzed it correctly. And both men and women are damned to repeat their own mistakes in an endless cycle of self-inflicted misery until one side or the other gets that life is not about power, but about strength, and until both see that it's not about separation, but unity. For it is in the unity that inner strength exists, and in the separation that it dissipates, leaving one feeling weak and powerless, and hence struggling for power. I tell you this, heal the rift between you, end the illusion of separation, and you shall be delivered back to the source of your inner strength. That is where you will find true power, the power to do anything, the power to be anything, the power to have anything. For the power to create is derived from the inner strength that is produced through unity. This is true of the relationship between you and your God, just as it is remarkably true of the relationship between you and your fellow humans. Stop thinking of yourself as separate, and all the true power that comes from the inner strength of unity is yours as a worldwide society and as an individual part of that whole to wield as you wish. Yet remember this, power comes from inner strength. Inner strength does not come from raw power. In this, most of the world has it backwards. Power without inner strength is an illusion. Inner strength without unity is a lie that has not served the race, but that has nevertheless deeply embedded itself into your race consciousness. For you think that inner strength comes from individuality and from separateness, and that is simply not so. Separation from God and from each other is the cause of all your dysfunction and suffering. Still, separation continues to masquerade as strength, and your politics, your economics, and even your religions have perpetuated the lie. This lie is the genesis of all wars and all the class struggles that lead to war, of all animosity between races and genders, and all the power struggles that lead to animosity, of all personal trials and tribulations, and all the internal struggles that lead to tribulations. Still you cling to the lie tenaciously, no matter where you've seen it lead you, even as it has led you to your own destruction. Now I tell you this, know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. There is no separation.
Not from each other, not from God, and not from anything that is. This truth I will repeat over and over. This observation I will make again and again. Act as if you were separate from nothing and no one, and you will heal your world tomorrow. This is the greatest secret of all time. It is the answer for which man has searched for millennia. It is the solution for which he has worked, the revelation for which he has prayed. Act as if you were separate from nothing, and you heal the world. Understand that it is about power with, not power over.
So getting back, first it was females who had power over males, and now it's the other way around. And males invented the devil in order to wrest this power away from the female tribal or clan leaders?
Yes. They used fear because fear was the only tool they had.
Again, not much has changed. Men do that to this day. Sometimes even before appeals to reason are tried, men use fear, particularly if they are the bigger man, the stronger men, or the bigger or stronger nation. Sometimes it seems actually ingrained in men. I mean, it seems cellular. Might is right, strength is power.
Yes. This has been the way since the overturn of the matriarchy.
How did it get that way?
That's what this short history is all about.
Well, then go on, please.
What men had to do to gain control during the matriarchal period was not to convince women that men ought to be given more power over their lives, but to convince other men. Life was, after all, going smoothly, and there were worse ways men could have to get through the day than simply doing some physical work to make themselves valued and then have sex. So it was not easy for men who were powerless to convince other powerless men to seek power, until they discovered fear. Fear was the one thing women hadn't counted on. It began, this fear, with seeds of doubt sown by the most disgruntled among the males. These were usually the least desirable of the men, the unmuscled, the unadorned, and hence those to whom women paid the least attention.
And you know, I'll bet that because this was so, their complaints were discounted as the ravings of rage born of sexual frustration.
That is correct. Still, the disgruntled men had to use the only tool they had, so they sought to grow fear from the seeds of doubt. What if the women were wrong? What if their way of running the world wasn't the best? What if it was, in fact, leading the whole society, all of the race, into sure and certain annihilation? This is something many men could not imagine. After all, didn't women have a direct line to the goddess? Were they not, in fact, exact physical replicas of the goddess? Was not the goddess good? The teaching was so powerful, so pervasive, that men had no choice but to invent a devil, a Satan, to counteract the unlimited goodness of the great mother imagined and worshipped by the people of the matriarchy.
How did they manage to convince anyone that there was such a thing as an evil one?
The one thing all of their society understood was the theory of the rotten apple. Even the women saw and knew from their experience that some children simply turned out bad, no matter what they did. Especially as everybody knew the boy children would just not be controlled. So a myth was created. One day the myth went, the great mother, the goddess of goddesses, brought forth a child who turned out to be not good. No matter what the mother tried, the child would not be good. Finally, he struggled with his mother for her very throne. This was too much, even for a loving, forgiving mother. The boy was banished forever, but continued to show up in clever disguises and clever costumes, sometimes even posing as the great mother herself. This myth laid the basis for men to ask, how do we know the goddess we worship is a goddess at all? It could be the bad child, now grown up and wanting to fool us. By this device, men got other men to worry, then to be angry that women weren't taking their worries seriously, then to rebel. The being you now call Satan was thus created. It was not difficult to create a myth about a bad child, and not difficult either to convince even the women of the clan of the possibility of the existence of such a creature. It was also not difficult getting anyone to accept that the bad child was male. Weren't males the inferior gender? This device was used to set up a mythological problem. If the bad child was male, if the evil one was masculine, who would there be to overpower him? Surely not a feminine goddess. For, said the men cleverly, when it came to matters of wisdom and insight, of clarity and compassion, of planning and thinking, no one doubted feminine superiority. Yet in matters of brute strength was not a male needed. Previously in goddess mythology, males were merely consorts, companions to the females, who acted as servants and fulfilled their robust desire for lustful celebration of their goddess magnificence. But now a male was needed who could do more, a male who could also protect the goddess and defeat the enemy. This transformation did not occur overnight, but across many years. Gradually, very gradually, societies began seeing the male consort as also the male protector in their spiritual mythologies. For now that there was someone to protect the goddess from, such a protector was clearly needed. It was not a major leap from male as protector to male as equal partner, now standing alongside the goddess. The male god was created, and for a while gods and goddesses ruled mythology together. Then, again, gradually, gods were given larger roles. The need for protection, for strength, began to supplant the need for wisdom and love. A new kind of love was born in these mythologies, a love which protects with brute force. But it was a love which also covets what it protects, which was jealous of its goddesses, which now did not simply serve their feminine lusts, but fought and died for them. Myths began to emerge of gods of enormous power, quarreling over, fighting for goddesses of unspeakable beauty. And so was born the jealous god.
This is fascinating.
Wait, we're coming to the end. But there's just a little more. It wasn't long before the jealousy of the gods extended not only to the goddesses, but to all creations in all realms. We had better love him, these jealous gods demanded, and no other god, or else. Since males were the most powerful species, and gods were the most powerful of the males, there seemed little room for argument with this new mythology. Stories of those who did argue and lost began to emerge. The god of wrath was born. Soon the whole idea of deity was subverted. Instead of being the source of all love, it became the source of all fear. A model of love which was largely feminine, the endlessly tolerant love of a mother for a child, and yes, even of a woman for her not too bright, but after all useful man, was replaced by the jealous, wrathful love of a demanding, intolerant God who would brook no interference, allow no insouciance, ignore no offense. The smile of the amused goddess, experiencing limitless love and gently submitting to the laws of nature, was replaced by the stern countenance of the not-so-amused god, proclaiming power over the laws of nature and forevermore limiting love. This is the God you worship today, and that's how you got where you are now.
Amazing. Interesting and amazing. But what is the point of telling me all of this?
It's important for you to know that you've made it all up. The idea that might is right or that power is strength was born in your male-created theological myths. The god of wrath and jealousy and anger was an imagining. It's something you imagined for so long it became real. Some of you still consider it real today, yet it has nothing to do with ultimate reality or what's really going on here.
And what is that?
What's going on is that your soul yearns for the highest experience of itself it can imagine. It came here for that purpose, to realize itself, that is, make itself real. in its experience. Then it discovered pleasures of the flesh, not just sex, but all manner of pleasures. And as it indulged in these pleasures, it gradually forgot the pleasures of the spirit. These too are pleasures, greater pleasures than the body could ever give you. But the soul forgot this.
Okay, now we're getting away from all the history and back into something you've touched on before in this dialogue. Could you go over this again?
Well, we're not actually getting away from the history. We're tying everything in together. You see, it's really quite simple. The purpose of your soul, its reason for coming to the body,
is to be and express who you really are. The soul yearns to do this, yearns to know itself and its own experience. This yearning to know is life seeking to be. This is God choosing to express. The God of your histories is not the God who really is. That is the point. Your soul is the tool through which I express and experience myself.
Doesn't that pretty much limit your experience?
It does, unless it doesn't. That's up to you. You get to be the expression and the experience of me at whatever level you choose. There have been those who have chosen very grand expressions. There have been none higher than Jesus the Christ, though there have been others who have been equally as high.
Christ is not the highest example. He is not God-made man.
Christ is the highest example. He is simply not the only example to reach that highest state. Christ is God-made man. He is simply not the only man made of God. Every man is God-made man. You are me expressing in your present form. Yet don't worry about limiting me, about how limited that makes me, for I am not limited and never have been. Do you think you are the only form that I have chosen? Do you think you are the only creatures whom I've imbued with the essence of me? I tell you, I am in every flower, every rainbow, every star in the heavens, and everything in and on every planet rotating around every star. I am the whisper of the wind, the warmth of your sun, the incredible individuality and the extraordinary perfection of every snowflake. I am the majesty in the soaring flight of eagles, and the innocence of the doe in the field, the courage of lions, the wisdom of the ancient ones. And I am not limited to the modes of expression seen on your planet alone. You do not know who I am, but only think you do. Yet think not that who I am is limited to you, or that my divine essence, this most Holy Spirit, was given to you and you alone. That would be an arrogant thought and a misinformed one. My beingness is in everything. Everything. The allness is my expression. The wholeness is my nature. There is nothing that I am not, and something I am not cannot be. My purpose in creating you, my blessed creatures, was so that I might have an experience of myself as the creator of my own experience.
Some people don't understand. Help all of us to understand.
The one aspect of God that only a very special creature could create was the aspect of myself as the creator. I am not the god of your mythologies, nor am I the goddess. I am the creator, that which creates. Yet I choose to know myself in my own experience. Just as I know my perfection of design through a snowflake, my awesome beauty through a rose, so too do I know my creative power through you. To you, I have given the ability to consciously create your experience, which is the ability I have. Through you, I can know every aspect of me. The perfection of the snowflake, the awesome beauty of the rose, the courage of lions, the majesty of eagles, all resides in you. In you I have placed all of these things, and one thing more, the consciousness to be aware of it. Thus have you become self-conscious, and thus have you been given the greatest gift, for you have been aware of yourself, being yourself, which is exactly what I am. I am myself, aware of myself, being myself. This is what is meant by this statement, I am that I am. You are that part of me which is the awareness experienced. And what you are experiencing and what I am experiencing through you is me, creating me. I am in the continual act of creating myself.
Does that mean that God is not a constant? Does that mean that you do not know what you're going to be in the next moment?
How can I know? You haven't decided yet.
Let me get this straight. I am deciding all of this?
Yes. You are me, choosing to be me. You are me, choosing to be what I am and choosing what I am going to be. All of you, collectively, are creating that. You are doing it on an individual basis as each of you decides who you are and experiences that, and you are doing it collectively as the co-creative collective being that you are. I am the collective experience of the lot of you.
And you really don't know who you're going to be in the next moment?
I was being lighthearted a moment ago. Of course I know. I already know all of your decisions, so I know who I am, who I have always been, and who I will always be.
How can you know what I'm going to choose to be, do, and have in the next moment? Much less what the whole human race is going to choose.
Simple. You've already done the choosing. Everything you're ever going to be, do, or have, you've already done. You're doing it right now. Do you see? There's no such thing as time.
Yeah, well, this too we've discussed before.
It's worth reviewing here.
Yes, tell me again how this works.
Past, present, and future are concepts you have constructed, realities you have invented, in order to create a context within which to frame your present experience. Otherwise, all of our experiences would be overlapping. They actually are overlapping, that is, happening at the same time. You simply don't know this. You've placed yourself in a perception shell that blocks out the total reality. I've explained this in detail in Book 2. It might be good for you to reread that material in order to place what's being said here into context. The point I'm making here is that everything is happening at once. Everything. So yes, I do know what I'm going to be, what I am, and what I was. I know this always. That is, always. So you see, there is no way you can surprise me. Your story, the whole worldly drama, was created so that you could know who you are in your own experience. It's also been designed to help you forget who you are, so that you might remember who you are once again and create it.
Because I can't create who I am if I'm already experiencing who I am. I can't create being 6 feet tall if I am already 6 feet tall. I'd have to be less than 6 feet tall, or at least think that I am.
Exactly. You understand it perfectly. And since it is the greatest desire of the soul, God, to experience itself as the creator, and since everything has already been created, we had no choice other than to find a way to forget all about our creation.
I'm amazed that we found a way. Try to forget that we are all one, and that the one of us which we are is God. Must be like trying to forget that a pink elephant is in the room. How could we be so mesmerized?
Well, you've just touched on the secret reason for all of physical life. It is life in the physical which has so mesmerized you, and rightly so, because it is, after all, an extraordinary adventure. What we used here to help us forget is what some of you would call the pleasure principle. The highest nature of all pleasure is that aspect of pleasure which causes you to create who you really are in your experience right here, right now, and to recreate and recreate and recreate again who you are at the next highest level of magnificence. That is the highest pleasure of God. The lower nature of all pleasure is that part of pleasure which causes you to forget who you really are. Do not condemn the lower nature, for without it, you could not experience the higher.
It's almost as if the pleasures of the flesh at first cause us to forget who we are, then become the very avenue through which we remember.
There you have it. You've just said it. And the use of physical pleasure as an avenue to remembering who you are is achieved by raising up through the body the basic energy of all life. This is the energy which you sometimes call sexual energy, and it is raised up along the inner column of your being until it reaches the area you call the third eye. This is the area just behind the forehead, between and slightly above the eyes. As you raise the energy, you cause it to course all through your body. It's like an inner orgasm.
How is this done? How do you do that?
You think it up. I mean that, just as I said it. You literally think it up, the inner pathway of what you have called your chakras. Once the life energy is raised up repeatedly, one acquires a taste for this experience, just as one acquires a hunger for sex. The experience of the energy being raised is very sublime. It quickly becomes the experience most desired. Yet you never completely lose your hunger for the lowering of the energy, for the basic passions, nor ought you to try. For the higher cannot exist without the lower in your experience, as I have pointed out to you many times. Once you get to the higher, you must go back to the lower in order to experience again the pleasure of moving to the higher. This is the sacred rhythm of all life. You do this not only by moving the energy around inside your body, you also do this by moving around the larger energy inside the body of God. You incarnate as lower forms, then evolve into higher states of consciousness. You are simply raising the energy in the body of God. You are that energy. And when you arrive at the highest state, you experience it fully. Then you decide what next you choose to experience and where in the realm of relativity you choose to go in order to experience it. You may wish to again experience yourself becoming yourself. It is a grand experience indeed, and so you may start all over again on the cosmic wheel.
Is this the same as the karmic wheel?
No, there is no such thing as a karmic wheel, not the way you have imagined it. Many of you have imagined that you are on not a wheel but a treadmill, in which you are working off the debts of past actions and trying valiantly not to incur any new ones. This is what some of you have called the karmic wheel. It's not so very different from a few of your Western theologies, for in both paradigms you are seen as an unworthy sinner, seeking to gain the purity to move on to the next spiritual level. The experience which I've described here, on the other hand, I am calling the cosmic wheel, because there is nothing of unworthiness, debt repayment, punishment, or purification. The cosmic wheel simply describes the ultimate reality, or what you might call the cosmology of the universe. It is the cycle of life, or what I sometimes term the process. It is a picture phrase describing the no beginning and no end nature of things, the continually connected path to and from the all of everything, on which the soul joyfully journeys throughout eternity. It is the sacred rhythm of all life, by which you move the energy of God.
Wow, I've never had that all explained to me so simply. I don't think I've ever understood all of this so clearly.
Well, clarity is what you brought yourself here to experience. That was the purpose of this dialogue. So I'm glad you're achieving that.
In truth, there is no lower or higher place on the cosmic wheel. How can there be? It's a wheel, not a ladder.
That's excellent. That is an excellent imagery and an excellent understanding. Therefore, condemn not that which you call lower, basic animal instincts of man, yet bless them, honoring them as the path through which and by which you find your way back home.
This is going to relieve a lot of people of a lot of guilt around sex.
It's why I've said play, play, play with sex and with all of life. Mix what you call the sacred with the sacrilegious, for until you see your altars as the ultimate place for love and your bedrooms as the ultimate place for worship, you see nothing at all. You think sex is separate from God? I tell you this, I am in your bedroom every night. So go ahead, mix what you call the profane and the profound, so that you can see that there is no difference, and experience all as one. Then when you continue to evolve, you will not see yourself as letting go of sex, but simply enjoying it at a higher level. For all of life is SEX, synergistic energy exchange. And if you understand this about sex, you will understand this about everything in life, even the end of life, what you call death. At the moment of your death, you will not see yourself as letting go of life, but simply enjoying it at a higher level. When at last you see that there is no separation in God's world, that is, nothing which is not God, then at last will you let go of this invention of man, which you have called Satan. If Satan exists, he exists as every thought you ever had of separation from me. You cannot be separate from me, for I am all that is. Men invented the devil to scare people into doing what they wanted, under the threat of separation from God if they did not. Condemnation, being hurled into the everlasting fires of hell, was the ultimate scare tactic. Yet now you need be afraid no more, for nothing can or ever will separate you from me. You and I are one. We cannot be anything else if I am what I am, all that is. Why then would I condemn myself? And how would I do it? How could I separate myself from myself when myself is all there is and there is nothing else? My purpose is to evolve, not to condemn, to grow, not to die, to experience, not to fail to experience. My purpose is to be, not to cease to be. I have no way to separate myself from you or anything else. Hell is simply not knowing this. Salvation is knowing and understanding it completely. You are now saved. You needn't worry about what's going to happen to you after death anymore.
Can we talk about this death business for a minute? You said this third book was going to be about higher truths, about universal truths. Well, through all the conversations we've had, we haven't talked that much about death and what happens after that. Let's do that now. Let's get to that.
Fine. What do you want to know?
Well, what happens when you die?
What do you choose to have happen?
You mean that what happens is whatever we choose to have happen?
Do you think that just because you've died, you stop creating?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Fair enough. You do know, incidentally. But I see you've forgotten, which is great. Everything's gone according to plan. When you die, you do not stop creating. Is that definitive enough for you?
Yes.
Good. Now, the reason you do not stop creating when you die is that you don't ever die. You cannot. For you are life itself, and life cannot not be life. Therefore, you cannot die. So at the moment of your death, what happens is you go on living. This is why so many people who have died do not believe it. Because they do not have the experience of being dead. On the contrary, they feel, because they are, very much alive. So there's confusion. The self may see the body lying there, all crumpled up, not moving, yet the self is suddenly moving all over the place. It has the experience often of literally flying all over the room, then of being everywhere in the space, all at once. And when it desires a particular point of view, it suddenly finds itself experiencing that. If the soul, the name we will now give to the self, wonders, gee, why is my body not moving? It will find itself right there, hovering right over the body, watching the stillness curiously. Someone enters the room and the soul thinks, "Who is that?" Immediately the soul is in front of or next to that person. Thus, in a very short time, the soul learns that it can go anywhere with the speed of its thought. A feeling of incredible freedom and lightness overtakes the soul, and it usually takes a little while for the entity to get used to all this bouncing around with every thought. If the person had children and should think of those children, immediately the soul is in the presence of those children wherever they are. Thus the soul learns that not only can it be wherever it wants with the speed of its thought, it can be in 2 places at once, or 3 places, or 5. It can exist, observe, and conduct activities in these places simultaneously, without difficulty or confusion. Then it can rejoin itself, returning to one place again, simply by refocusing. The soul remembers in the next life what it would have been well to remember in this life, that all effect is created by thought, and that manifestation is a result of intention.
What I focus on as my intention becomes my reality.
Exactly. The only difference is the speed with which you experience the result. In the physical life, there might be a lapse between thought and experience. In the spirit's realm, there is no lapse. Results are instantaneous. Newly departed souls therefore learn to monitor their thoughts very carefully, because whatever they think of, they experience. I use the word learn here very loosely, more as a figure of speech than an actual description. The term remember would be more accurate. If physicalized souls learn to control their thoughts as quickly and as efficiently as spiritualized souls, their whole lives would change. In the creation of individual reality, thought control, or what some might call prayer, is everything.
Prayer?
Thought control is the highest form of prayer. Therefore, think only on good things and righteous. Dwell not in negativity and darkness. And even in moments when things look bleak, especially in those moments, see only perfection, express only gratefulness, and then imagine only what manifestation of perfection you choose next. In this formula is found tranquility. In this process is found peace. In this awareness is found joy.
That's extraordinary. That's an extraordinary piece of information. Thanks for bringing that through me.
Thanks for letting it come through. Sometimes you are cleaner than at other times. Some moments you are more open, like a strainer which has just been rinsed. It is more open. There are more holes open.
Good way of putting it.
I do my best. To recap then, souls released from the body quickly remember to monitor and control their thoughts very carefully, for whatever they think of, that is what they create and experience. I say again, it is the same for souls still residing with the body, except the results are usually not as immediate. And it is the time lapse between thought and creation, which can be days, weeks, months, or even years, which creates the illusion that things are happening to you, not because of you. This is an illusion, causing you to forget that you are at cause in the matter. As I have described now several times, this forgetting is built into the system. It is part of the process, for you cannot create who you are until you forget who you are. So the illusion causing forgetfulness is an effect created on purpose. When you leave the body, it will therefore be a big surprise to see the instant, obvious connection between your thoughts and your creations. It will be a shocking surprise at first, and then a very pleasant one, as you begin to remember that you were at cause in the creation of your experience, not at the effect of it.
Why is there such a delay between thought and creation before we die, and no delay at all after we die?
Because you are working within the illusion of time. There's no delay between thought and creation away from the body, because you are also away from the parameter of time.
In other words, as you have said so often, time does not exist.
Not as you understand it. The phenomenon of time is really a function of perspective.
Why does it exist while we are with the body?
You have caused it to by moving into, by assuming your present perspective. You use this perspective as a tool with which you can explore and examine your experiences much more fully by separating them into individual pieces rather than a single occurrence. Life is a single occurrence, an event of the cosmos that is happening right now. All of it is happening everywhere. There is no time but now. There is no place but here. Here and now is all there is. Yet you chose to experience the magnificence of here and now in its every detail, and to experience your divine self as the here and now creator of that reality. There are only two ways, two fields of experience in which you can do that: time and space. So magnificent was this thought that you literally exploded with delight. In that explosion of delight was created space between the parts of you, and the time it took to move from one part of yourself to another. In this way, you literally tore yourself apart to look at the pieces of you. You might say that you were so happy, you fell to pieces. You've been picking up the pieces ever since.
That's all my life is. I'm just putting together the pieces, trying to see if they make any sense.
And it is through the device called time that you've managed to separate the pieces, to divide the indivisible, thus to see it and experience it more fully as you are creating it. Even as you look at a solid object through a microscope, seeing that it is not solid at all, but actually a conglomeration of a million different effects, different things all happening at once, and thus creating the larger effect. So too do you use time as the microscope of your soul. Consider the parable of the rock. Once there was a rock filled with countless atoms, protons, neutrons, and subatomic particles of matter. These particles were racing around continually in a pattern, each particle going from here to there, and taking time to do so. Yet going so fast that the rock itself seemed to move not at all. It just was. There it lay, drinking in the sun, soaking up the rain, and moving not at all. "What is this inside of me that is moving?" the rock asked. "It is you," said a voice from afar. "Me?" replied the rock. "Why, that is impossible. I'm not moving at all. Anyone could see that." "Yes, from a distance," the voice agreed. "From way over here, you do look as if you were solid, still, not moving. But when I come closer, when I look very closely at what is actually happening, I see that everything that comprises what you are is moving. It is moving at incredible speed through time and space in a particular pattern which creates you as the thing called rock. And so you are like magic. You are moving and not moving at the same time." "But," asked the rock, "which then is the illusion? The oneness, the stillness of the rock? Or the separateness and the movement of its parts?" To which the voice replied, "Which then is the illusion? The oneness, the stillness of God, or the separateness and movement of its parts?" And I tell you this, upon this rock I will build my church, for this is the rock of ages. This is the eternal truth that leaves no stone unturned. I've explained it all for you here in this little story. This is the cosmology. Life is a series of minute, incredibly rapid movements. These movements do not affect at all the immobility and the beingness of everything that is. Yet, just as with the atoms of the rock, it is the movement which is creating the stillness right before your eyes. From this distance, there is no separateness. There cannot be. For all that is all there is, and there is nothing else. I am the unmoved mover. From the limited perspective with which you view all that is, you see yourself as separate and apart, not one unmovable being, but many, many beings constantly in motion. Both observations are accurate. Both realities are real.
And when I die, I don't die at all, but simply shift into awareness of the macrocosm. where there is no time or space now and then, before and after.
Precisely. You've got it.
Let me see if I can say it back to you. Let me see if I can describe it.
Go ahead.
Well, from a macro perspective, there is no separateness, and from way back there, all the particles of everything merely look like the whole. As you look at the rock at your feet, you see the rock right then and there, as whole, complete, and perfect. Yet even in the fraction of a moment that you hold that rock in your awareness, there's a lot going on within that rock. There's incredible movement at incredible speed of the particles of that rock. And what are those particles doing? They're making the rock what it is. As you look at this rock, you do not see this process. Even if you're conceptually aware of it, to you it's all happening now. The rock isn't becoming a rock. It is a rock right here, right now. Yet if you were the consciousness of one of the submolecular particles inside that rock, you would experience yourself moving at insane speed, first here, then there. And if some voice outside the rock said to you, it's all happening at once, you would call it a liar or a charlatan. Still, from the perspective of a distance from the rock, the idea that any part of the rock is separate from any other part, and further is moving around at insane speed, would appear to be the lie. From that distance could be seen what could not be seen up close, that all is one, and that all the movement hasn't moved anything.
You have it. You have a grasp of it. What you are saying, and you are correct, is that life is all a matter of perspective. If you continue to see this truth, you will begin to understand the macro reality of God, and you will have unlocked a secret of the whole universe. All of it is the same thing.
The universe is a molecule in the body of God.
That's actually not so very far off.
And it is to the macro reality that we return in consciousness when we do the thing called die?
Yes. Yet even the macro reality to which you return is but a micro reality of an even larger macro reality, which is a smaller part of a larger reality still, and so on and on and on, forever and ever and even forevermore, world without end. We are God, the it that is, constantly in the act of creating ourselves, constantly in the act of being what we are now, until we aren't that anymore, but become something else. Even the rock will not be a rock forever, but only what seems like forever. Before it was a rock, it was something else. It fossilized into that rock through a process taking hundreds of thousands of years. It was once something else and will be something else again. The same is true of you. You are not always the you that you are now. You are something else. And today, as you stand there in your utter magnificence, you truly are something else again.
Whoa, that's amazing. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. I've never heard anything like that. You've taken the whole cosmology of life and put it in terms I can hold in my mind. That's amazing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm doing my best.
You're doing a damn good job.
That's probably not the phrase you should have chosen there.
Whoops.
Just kidding. Lightening things up here, having a little fun. I cannot actually be offended. Yet your fellow human beings often allow themselves to be offended on my behalf.
So I've noticed. But getting back, I think I've just caught hold of something.
What's that?
This whole explanation rolled out when I asked a single question. How come time exists when we're in the body, but not when the soul is released? And what you seem to be saying is that time is really perspective, that it neither exists nor ceases to exist, but that as the soul alters its perspective, we experience ultimate reality in different ways.
That's exactly what I'm saying. You've got it.
And you are making the larger point that in the macrocosm, the soul is aware of the direct relationship between thought and creation, between one's ideas and one's experience.
Yes. At the macro level, it's like seeing the rock and seeing the movement within the rock. There is no time between the movement of the atoms and the appearance of the rock it creates. The rock is, even as the movements occur. Indeed, because the movements occur. This cause and effect is instant. The movement is occurring and the rock is being, all at the same time. This is what the soul realizes at the moment of what you call death. It is simply a change in perspective. You see more, so you understand more. After death, you are no longer limited in your understanding. You see the rock, and you see into the rock. You will look at what now seem to be the most complex aspects of life and say, of course, it will all be very clear to you. Then there will be new mysteries for you to ponder. As you move around the cosmic wheel, there will be larger and larger realities, bigger and bigger truths. Yet if you can remember this truth, your perspective creates your thoughts, and your thoughts create everything. And if you can remember it before you leave the body, not after, your whole life will change.
And the way to control your thoughts is to change your perspective.
Precisely. Assume a different perspective and you will have a different thought about everything. In this way, you will have learned to control your thought. And in the creation of your experience, controlled thought is everything. Some people call this constant prayer.
You've said this before, but I don't think I've ever thought of prayer in this way.
Why not see what happens if you do so? If you imagined that the controlling and directing of your thoughts is the highest form of prayer, you would think only on good things and righteous. You would dwell not in negativity and darkness, though you may be immersed in it. And in moments when things look bleak, perhaps especially in those moments, you would see only perfection.
You have come back to that over and over again.
I am giving you tools. With these tools, you can change your life. I am repeating the most important of them over and over again.
I am repeating them, for repetition will produce recognition, knowing again when you need it most. Everything that occurs, everything that has occurred, is occurring, ever will occur, is the outward physical manifestation of your innermost thoughts, choices, ideas, and determinations regarding who you are and who you choose to be. Condemn not, therefore, those aspects of life with which you disagree. Seek instead to change them and the conditions that made them possible. Behold the darkness, yet curse it not. Rather be a light unto the darkness, and so transform it. Let your light so shine before men that those who stand in the darkness will be illumined by the light of your being, and all of you will see at last who you really are. Be a bringer of the light, for your light can do more than illuminate your own path. Your light can be the light which truly lights the world. Shine on, then, O Illuminati. Shine on, that the moment of your greatest darkness may yet become your grandest gift. And even as you are gifted, so too will you gift others, giving to them the unspeakable treasure, themselves. Let this be your task. Let this be your greatest joy, to give people back to themselves, even in their darkest hour, especially in that hour. The world waits for you. Heal it. Now. In the place where you are, there is much you can do. For my sheep are lost, and must now be found. Be ye therefore as good shepherds, and lead them back to me.
Thank you. Thank you for that call and for that challenge. Thank you for that placement of the goal before me. Thank you for always keeping me heading in the direction you know I really want to take. That is why I come to you. That is why I have loved and blessed this dialogue, for it is in conversation with you that I find the divine within me and begin to see it within all others.
My dearly beloved, the heavens rejoice when you say that. That is the very reason I have come to you, and will come to everyone who calls to me, even as I come now to those others who are hearing these words. For this conversation was never intended to be with you alone. It was intended for millions around the world, and it has been placed in each person's hands just exactly when they have needed it, sometimes in the most miraculous ways. It has brought them to the wisdom they themselves have called forth, perfectly suited for this moment in their lives. This is the wonder of what has been happening here, that each of you is producing this result by yourself. It looks as if someone else gave you this material, brought you to this conversation, opened you to this dialogue, yet you brought yourself here. So let us now explore together the remaining questions which you have held in your heart.
May we, please, then speak more of life after death? You were explaining what happens to the soul after death, and I so want to know as much about that as I can.
We will speak of it then, until your yearning has been satisfied. I said earlier that what happens is whatever you want to happen. I meant that. You create your own reality, not only when you are with the body, but when you are away from it. At first you may not realize this, and so you may not be consciously creating your reality. Your experience will then be created by one of two other energies, your uncontrolled thoughts or the collective consciousness. To the degree that your uncontrolled thoughts are stronger than the collective consciousness, to that degree you will experience them as reality. To the degree that the collective consciousness is accepted, absorbed, and internalized, to that degree you will experience it as your reality. This is no different from how you create what you call reality in your present life. Always in life you have before you three choices. 1, you may allow your uncontrolled thoughts to create the moment. 2, you may allow your creative consciousness to create the moment. 3, you may allow the collective consciousness to create the moment. Here's an irony. In your present life, you find it difficult to create consciously from your individual awareness, and indeed, often assume your individual understandings to be wrong, given all that you are seeing around you, and so you surrender to the collective consciousness, whether it serves you to do so or not. In the first moments of what you call the afterlife, on the other hand, you may find it difficult to surrender to the collective consciousness, given all that you are seeing around you, which may be unbelievable to you, and so you will be tempted to hold to your own individual understandings, whether they serve you or not. I would tell you this. It is when you are surrounded by lower consciousness that you will benefit more from remaining with your individual understandings, and when you are surrounded by higher consciousness, that you receive greater benefit from surrender. It may therefore be wise to seek beings of high consciousness. I cannot overemphasize the importance of the company you keep. In what you call the afterlife, there is nothing to worry about on this score, for you will instantly and automatically be surrounded by beings of high consciousness and by high consciousness itself. Still, you may not know that you are being so lovingly enveloped. You may not immediately understand. It may therefore seem to you as if you are having things happen to you, that you are at the whim of whatever fortunes are working at the moment. In truth, you experience the consciousness in which you die. Some of you have expectations without even knowing it. All your life you've had thoughts about what occurs after death, and when you die, those thoughts are made manifest, and you suddenly realize, make real, what you've been thinking about. And it is your strongest thoughts, the ones you've held most fervently, that, as always in life, will prevail.
Then a person could go to hell. If people believed all during life that hell is a place which most certainly existed, and that God will judge the quick and the dead, that he will separate the wheat from the chaff and the goats from the sheep, and that they are surely going to hell, given all they have done to offend God, then they would go to hell. They would burn in the everlasting fires of damnation. How could they escape it? You've said repeatedly throughout this dialogue that hell does not exist, yet you also say that we create our own reality and have the power to create any reality at all out of our thought about it. So hellfire and damnation could and does exist for those who believe in it.
Nothing exists in ultimate reality save that which is. You are correct in pointing out that you may create any sub-reality you choose, including the experience of hell as you describe it. I've never said at any point in this entire dialogue that you could not experience hell. I said that hell does not exist. Most of what you experience does not exist, yet you experience it nonetheless.
This is unbelievable. A friend of mine named Barnett Bain just produced a movie about this. I mean, about this exactly. It's August 7th, 1998, as I speak these words, and I'm inserting this in the dialogue in between lines of a discussion of 2 years ago, and I have never done this before, but just before sending this to the publisher, I was rereading the manuscript one last time, and I realized, hold it! Robin Williams has just made a movie about exactly what we're talking about here. It's called What Dreams May Come, and it's a startling depiction on film of what you've just said.
I am familiar with it.
You are? God goes to the movies?
God makes movies.
Whoa.
Yes. You never saw Oh, God?
Well, sure, but I never...
What do you think, God only writes books?
So is the Robin Williams movie literally true? I mean, is that how it is?
No. No movie or book or other human explanation of the divine is literally true.
Not even the Bible? The Bible is not literally true?
No. And I think you know that.
Well, what about this book? Surely this book is literally true.
No, I hate to tell you this, but you're bringing this through your personal filter. Now, I will agree that the mesh on your filter is thinner, finer. You've become a very good filter. But you are a filter nonetheless.
Yeah, I know that. I just wanted it stated again here because some people take books like this and movies like What Dreams May Come as, well, as literal truth. And I want to stop them from doing that.
The writers and producers of that film brought some enormous truth through an imperfect filter. The point they sought to make is that you will experience after death exactly what you expect and choose to experience. They made that point very effectively. Now, shall we get back to where we were?
Yes. I'd like to know just what I wanted to know when I was watching that movie. If there is no hell, yet I am experiencing hell, what the hell is the difference?
There wouldn't be any as long as you remain in your created reality. Yet you will not create such a reality forever. Some of you won't experience it for more than what you would call a nanosecond, and therefore you will not experience, even in the private domains of your own imagination, a place of sadness or suffering.
Well, what would stop me from creating such a place for all eternity if I believed all my life that there was such a place, and that something I'd done had caused me to deserve such a place?
Your knowledge and understanding. Just as in this life your next moment is created out of the new understandings you've gained from your last moment, so too in what you call the afterlife will you create a new moment from what you've come to know and understand in the old. And one thing you will come to know and understand very quickly is that you are at choice always about what you wish to experience. That is because in the afterlife, results are instantaneous, and you will not be able to miss the connection between your thoughts about a thing and the experience those thoughts create. You will understand yourself to be creating your own reality.
This would explain why some people's experience is happy and some people's experience is frightening. Why some people's experience is profound while other people's experience is virtually non-existent. And why so many different stories exist about what happens in the moments after death. Some people come back from near-death experiences filled with peace and love and with no fear ever again of death, while others return very frightened, certain that they've just encountered dark and evil forces.
The soul responds to, recreates the mind's most powerful suggestion, producing that in its experience. Some souls remain in that experience for a time, making it very real, even as they remained in their experiences while with the body, though they were equally as unreal and impermanent. Other souls quickly adjust, see the experience for what it is, begin to think new thoughts, and move immediately to new experiences.
Do you mean that there is no one particular way that things are in the afterlife? Are there no eternal truths that exist outside of my own mind? Do we continue to go on creating myths and legends and make-believe experiences right past our death and into the next reality? When do we get released from the bondage? When do we come to know the truth?
When you choose to. That was the point of the Robin Williams movie. That is the point being made here. Those whose only desire is to know the eternal truth of all that is, to understand the great mysteries, to experience the grandest reality, do so. Yes, there is a one great truth. There is a final reality. But you will always get what you choose, regardless of that reality, precisely because the reality is that you are a divine creature, divinely creating your reality even as you are experiencing it. Yet should you choose to stop creating your own individual reality and begin to understand and experience the larger unified reality, you will have an immediate opportunity to do that. Those who die in a state of such choosing of such desiring, of such willingness, and such knowing move into the experience of the oneness at once. Others move into the experience only if, as, and when they so desire. It is precisely the same when the soul is with the body. It is all a matter of desire, of your choosing, of your creating, and ultimately of your creating the uncreatable, that is, of your experiencing that which has already been created.
This is the created creator, the unmoved mover. It is the Alpha and the Omega, the before and the after, the now, then, always aspect of everything which you call God. I will not forsake you, yet I will not force myself upon you. I've never done so, and I never will. You may return to me whenever you wish, now, while you are with the body, or after you have left it. You may return to the one and experience the loss of your individual self whenever it pleases you. You may also recreate the experience of your individual self whenever you choose. You may experience any aspect of the all that is that you wish, in its tiniest proportion or its grandest. You may experience the microcosm or the macrocosm.
I may experience the particle or the rock.
Yes, good, you are getting this. When you reside with the human body, you are experiencing a smaller portion than the whole. That is, a portion of the microcosm, although by no means the smallest portion thereof. When you reside away from the body in what some would call the spirit world, you've enlarged by quantum leaps your perspective. You will suddenly seem to know everything, be able to be everything. You will have a macrocosmic view of things, allowing you to understand that which you do not now understand. One of the things you will then understand is that there's a larger macrocosm still. That is, you will suddenly become clear that all that is even greater than the reality you are then experiencing. This will fill you at once with awe and anticipation, wonder and excitement, joy and exhilaration. For you will then know and understand what I know and understand, that the game never ends.
Will I ever get to a place of true wisdom?
In the time after your death, you may choose to have every question you ever had answered, and open yourself to new questions you never dreamed existed. You may choose to experience oneness with all that is, and you will have a chance to decide what you wish to be, do, and have next. Do you choose to return to your most recent body? You choose to experience life again in human form, but of another kind? Do you choose to remain where you are in the spirit world, at the level you are then experiencing? Do you choose to go on, go further in your knowing and experiencing? Do you choose to lose your identity altogether and now become part of the oneness? What do you choose? What do you choose? What do you choose? Always that is the question I will be asking you. Always that is the inquiry of the universe. For the universe knows nothing except how to grant your fondest wish, your greatest desire. Indeed, it is doing that every moment, every day. The difference between you and me is that you are not consciously aware of this. I am.
Tell me, will my relatives, my loved ones, meet me after I die and help me understand what's going on, as some people say they will? Will I be reunited with those who have gone before? Will we be able to spend eternity together?
What do you choose? You choose for these things to happen? Then they will.
Okay, I'm confused. Are you saying that all of us have free will and that this free will extends even past our deaths?
Yes, that is what I am saying.
Well, if that's true, then the free will of my loved ones would have to coincide with mine. They must have the same thought and desire that I have when I'm having it, or they wouldn't be there for me when I die. Further, what if I wanted to spend the rest of eternity with them and one or two of them wanted to move on? Maybe one of them wanted to move higher and higher into this experience of reunification with the oneness, as you put it. Then what?
There is no contradiction in the universe. There are things that look like contradictions, but there are none, in fact. Should a situation arise such as the one you described, it's a very good question, by the way, what will happen is that you will both be able to have what you choose.
Both?
Both.
May I ask how?
You may.
Okay, how?
What is your thought about God? Do you think that I exist in one place only?
No, I think you exist everywhere at once. I believe God is omnipresent.
Well, you are right about that. There is nowhere that I am not. Do you understand this?
I think so.
Good. So what makes you think it's any different with you?
Well, because you're God and I'm a mere mortal.
I see. We're still hung up on this mere mortal thing.
Okay. Suppose I assume for the sake of discussion that I too am God, or at least made up of the same stuff as God. Then are you saying that I too can be everywhere all the time?
It is merely a matter of what the consciousness chooses to hold in its reality. In what you would call the spirit world, what you can imagine, you can experience. Now, if you want to experience yourself being one soul in one place at one time, you may do that. Yet if you wish to experience your spirit being larger than that, being in more than one place at one time, you may do that as well. Indeed, you may experience your spirit as being anywhere you wish, any time. That is because in truth there is only one time and one place, and you are in all of it always. You may thus experience any part or parts of it you wish, whenever you choose.